Okay. The audio issues seem to have fixed. And if so, please leave a thumbs up in the comments. I think we figured it out. I think we should just go ahead and start the show over. I think that's a pretty good idea because if you didn't hear the first 10 minutes, that's okay. I mean, I was told there were audio issues. So we'll just start this. We'll just start this thing over from scratch. Welcome in to the show. Glad that you could join us. I got a lot to get to today. The AFCA Coaches Poll ranking just came out 2 days ago. I probably should have talked about that on Tuesday's show, but we had some other matters that we had to attend to. I'm gonna react to those tonight. Trust me. August is prediction season on the air raid, so we got to continue with our predictions. Last Tuesday we did the Big 12 record predictions. We did conference championship predictions. Now for the ACC, they're up on the hot seat. We're going to talk about the ACC. Purdue's athletic director had some crazy comments directed to Indiana today. We love some good old fashioned hate between two rivals on this show. So we're going to talk about that. We love some good off-season beef in college football. That's what we're going to talk about. Indiana continues to bolster their defensive line thanks to the new court ruling that allows class of 2022 high school athletes to now get a fifth year of eligibility. Indiana is certainly happy about that. I'll talk about that later in the show. USC and Notre Dame have renewed a rivalry that never should have stopped, and that will be coming in 2030. We're going to introduce a new segment on the show, Fall Camp Intel, because a lot of teams just now started fall camp this week. And locally, we talk a lot about Vanderbilt. Now, this is a national college football show, but we also have some local ties as well. I have some Vanderbilt fall camp intel that you're going to want to hear. And then I got to address some rumors at the tail end of the show. I got to get out in front of this issue. So lots to talk about here on the show. The most important thing that you can do right now is if you're listening, please make sure that you're subscribed. It doesn't sign you up for anything. It doesn't put you on some sort of wait list or anything like that. All it does is it helps us out and it alerts you when we go live or when we post videos, that sort of thing. So please make sure that you're subscribed and get 5 of your friends, 5 of your family members to do the same. That would be a huge help. And if you think that you're subscribed but you're not entirely sure, just go ahead and double check. That is much appreciated. Enough from me. Let's get into the important matters at hand. The AFCA Coaches Poll came out a couple of days ago, and I have some strong thoughts on it. So I'm just going to read to you the top 7 because I do believe that they at least got the top 7 teams right. Now the order is to be debated and determined. Let's go ahead and start out with 1 through 7. We have Ohio State at number 1, Oregon at 2, Georgia at 3, Texas at number 4, Notre Dame at 5, Indiana at 6, and Miami at 7. I'll start with Ohio State. Ohio State is the preseason favorite to win the national championship. It makes sense why they're at number 1. Oregon, I understand why they're right behind them at number 2. Oregon is also getting a lot of buzz. Dan Lanning has yet to win a national championship at Oregon, and expectations are sky high. They returned a lot of the same team that they had last year that made it to the semifinals of the college football playoff. But the team that they lost to, the Indiana Hoosiers, who, by the way, and I had to fact check myself on this, they did go 16-0 last year. They did win the national championship, and yet they're all the way down at number 6, behind teams like Texas, who is at number 4. Georgia is at number 3, Texas at 4, Notre Dame at 5, and then you have Indiana, little old Indiana, at 6. The truth of the matter is, guys like Dan Lanning, guys like Steve Sarkisian, and guys like Marcus Freeman, who have not won a national championship at their respective schools, oftentimes get bashed from other college football fans. I'm certainly not one of them, but other college football fans, they get bashed because they haven't won a national championship. There's a difference between haven't and cannot. They just haven't won a national championship yet. All 3 of those coaches are perfectly capable of winning a national championship soon at their schools. It's more so just a matter of when. But Indiana and Curt Cignetti, 2 years ago when Curt Cignetti was introduced as the head coach at Indiana, he was at the basketball game. He was talking about how they're going to beat Michigan. They're going to beat Ohio State. They're going to beat all these teams in the Big Ten. You know, that made everybody kind of perk up a little bit in their chairs. Eyes got nice and wide. The crazy part is he actually went out and he did it. They went 16-0. They won the national championship at Indiana. And yet, I don't know what this poll, if they're trying to predict what's going to happen, if they're going off of what happened last year. But regardless, Indiana at 6 is criminal. They should be a lot higher than at number 6. Texas at 4, I don't have a problem with. I probably will have Texas higher. And by the way, for those of you that are new around here, we do this thing every year called the PK poll. And basically what that is, it's the equivalent to what you might consider, you know, the AP poll. There are a lot of different rankings out there. We release a ranking every single week based on the field results only, based on the current season, nothing else. I consider it more accurate than things like the AP poll, and I can get into that a little bit later. But yes, those will be released every week, starting with the first week, week 0. That is the week of August 24th. So the first PK poll will be released then, and I will show you how I rank these teams. Like I said, Indiana is at number 6. Miami is at number 7. I do believe the coaches got the teams right in the top 7. The order, I would definitely reorder these teams, and I will reveal that at a later date. Let's go ahead and move on with the list. Texas A&M at number 8, Oklahoma at number 9, Ole Miss at 10, and Alabama at 11. So you see a run of 4 straight SEC teams. Now, this is a preseason ranking. It doesn't guarantee any success. It doesn't guarantee wins on the field. And it certainly, when it's all said and done at the end of the year, the top 25 will not look like this. But when we're having the debate about who's a better conference between the Big Ten and the SEC, my stance is very clear on this. The Big Ten is the best. How I determine who I think the best conference is in college football, how many teams do you have in your conference that are capable of winning a national championship and are legitimate national championship contenders? The Big Ten has more. That's clearly evident, with Ohio State, Oregon being 1 and 2, and then Indiana also thrown there in the top 6. The SEC only has Georgia and Texas present in the top 7, which that is viewed to be, in the preseason at least, the top tier in the SEC heading into 2026. But then you see this big clump of SEC teams from the 8 to 11 range. And then even further, you know, Texas Tech is at 12, but LSU is also at 13. So there are 5 SEC teams in those next few spots. The strength of the SEC is the middle. There's more parity in the SEC than, you know, I can remember, because it used to be Alabama and Georgia running the conference. Now, Georgia has won the SEC really more than anybody the last few years, but there's a lot more parity when it comes to that second tier of SEC teams. And I think that's represented in this poll. Moving on, USC, the next Big Ten representative, at 14, BYU at 15, Michigan at 16, Penn State at 17. Now we're starting to see a run of Big Ten teams. Tennessee at 18, which I will not have Tennessee that high. I may not even have Tennessee ranked. There's just not a concern, just a question mark, I'd say, because the game hasn't been played yet, so we don't know at the quarterback position. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be George McIntyre? Is it going to be Faison Brandon? That's yet to be determined. We will find out, because fall camp started for them yesterday. Washington at 19, SMU at 20, Utah at 21, Iowa at 22, and here is where I have a really big problem with the coaches poll. Clemson at 23? Dabo Swinney, the head coach of Clemson, probably looked at this list and started to laugh and like, 23? No. Who's actually at 23? No, it's Clemson. There's a tiger paw right there. I don't know if you're trying to predict any type of future success. I thought Clemson's best chance to compete for a national title was last year. There are just too many question marks all over that team. You lost 9 players to the NFL draft, and they don't rely on the portal a whole lot. They did make more moves under Dabo Swinney in the transfer portal than they have, but I'm telling you, I've read the preview magazines. I listen to college football. I consume college football content like a lot of you do. What is it about Clemson that makes you think that they're a top 25 team? I think it's evidence of drug use. Clemson screams 6-6, 7-5 at best. That is not a top 25 team. And I've gotten into this debate a lot. I just don't understand why Clemson is represented, but they do play LSU in week 1. So if they lose that game, they're out. They're out, even if they're in the AP polls, top 25. Houston is at number 24. I like Houston. I think Houston I think they're my dark horse in the Big 12 this year. I could see them not only competing. It's hard for me to say because I predicted Texas Tech and BYU to be in the Big 12 championship. And I think Houston can certainly make a run at it, but I don't see it happening. I think there's a concrete tier 1 in the Big 12, and Houston is not in it right now. And Missouri is at number 25. 9 SEC teams, 8 Big 10 teams. So lots of representation from the Power 2 in college football. That's my full reaction on the coaches poll that was released a couple days ago. Now I think the AP poll is releasing their first, their preseason poll coming up here in I think next week. So here's one thing you need to know about this show. We take great issue with the AP poll every week because how I believe rankings should work is I don't have a problem with preseason polls. I really don't. I don't have a problem. Some people think that we should get rid of them and not start a ranking until like week 6. But for somebody who's making a living talking about college football, it helps to have content to talk about. So I'm a favor of the preseason polls. I do one myself. I'll release it here in less than a couple weeks. But once the games actually start playing out on the field, once we start getting game results, your preseason expectations of a team need to go out the window. I believe a ranking should work week by week. What has a team done on the field? Who have they beaten? What have they looked like? That's the only thing that matters when you're ranking teams week to week. So that'll be reflected in my PK poll when it comes out. The AP does not do that. They still hold on to their preseason expectations of a team, and that bothers me. So we're going to bash the AP poll a fair amount throughout the season, but we're also going to release our PK poll. That's a way. That's how we cope on the show with some of the terrors that the AP poll presents. So that's enough of my rambling. Let us move on to segment 2, and that is ACC record predictions. We're going through all 17 teams, and we're going to start with the Miami Hurricanes because we haven't talked about them enough on this show. Miami, I've already said that this is a team that went 13-3 last year. They made a national championship appearance. They were at the 50-yard line, had a chance to drive and potentially win the national championship in their home building against Indiana. They didn't do that, but they finished the year 13-3 and were the national runner-ups. I've already said that I think this Miami team has a chance to be better than they were last year. And that it's very rare that I say that, given the team just came off of a national championship appearance. Going through their schedule, pretty manageable. It is a pretty manageable schedule, but I believe they upgraded at the quarterback position. I believe with the returning talent that is Malachi Toney, with the additions that they made in the portal with Cooper Barkate, who is Darian Mensah's leading receiver at Duke last year, I have no worries about the offensive line because I know who's coaching them. That's Mario Cristobal. I trust Miami's defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman, that despite the losses that they had due to the NFL draft and things of that sort, Defense is going to be fine. So really, just going through Miami's schedule, the only toss-up that I see is that Notre Dame game, and I have that circled. That is November 7th. That is in South Bend. They've already announced the kickoff time. It's 6:30 on NBC. I have Miami going 11-1 this year, with their only loss coming to Notre Dame. And I believe that's week 11. I want to say that's week 11, week 10, something like that. That is the only time I see Miami slipping up. Partly because I'm that high on Notre Dame, and also, too, Miami going to play a game in South Bend, Indiana, early November. That just doesn't mesh. So I have Miami going 11-1. And the teams that I think will be, Miami's in a tier of their own right now in the ACC. You move to tier 2. There are a couple teams that I really, really like. Dark horses, if I might add. That is the Louisville Cardinals, who actually open up their season in Nashville. I will be in attendance at the game, so we'll have coverage from Nissan Stadium when they have Ole Miss. That's going to be a really fun game. Two teams that will be. I expect Louisville wasn't in the Coaches Poll, but I expect Louisville to be represented in the AP poll when it comes out, and that's going to be a fun game because Ole Miss is a consensus top 10 team, and they're taking on another top 25 team. That's going to be really fun. If Louisville, I expect them to lose that first game in week 1. But even if they find a way to squeak by Ole Miss, the rest of their schedule, they have SMU in there, who I'm actually going to talk about next. They play a game at NC State. They don't have to go to Stanford, and they don't have to go to Cal, which saves them a lot of travel. With SMU, them being in Texas, they get to host SMU in Louisville. It's a very manageable schedule. So I could talk myself into Louisville going 10-2. I don't think that's going to happen. I wanted to make room for error. I have Louisville going 9-3. And if they're 9-3, that means that they could potentially be playing a team, and I'm not even going to spoil it, Miami, I just said they're in a tier of their own, so I expect Miami to be playing in the ACC championship game. Could Louisville be playing them? Let's move on to SMU. So I am extremely high on SMU's quarterback this year. Kevin Jennings, this is a guy that if you haven't watched him play, he started in their playoff game a couple years ago when they went to Penn State. Didn't look great. But Kevin Jennings has NFL arm talent written all over him. I highly recommend that you go watch him closely if you haven't already. An ACC schedule compared to some of the schedules that are present in the Big Ten this year, that are present in the SEC this year, it's not exactly a murderer's row. So I'm not going to go through and list the schedule of every team. I have SMU going 9-3, but that game that I'm circling is week 3 when they're at Louisville. I believe that game determines who Miami will play in the ACC championship come early December. Let's move on to the Clemson Tigers, a team that we literally just talked about. They're at LSU in week 1. The Battle of the Tigers, the battle of the Death Valleys. I believe College Game Day is going to be there. That'll be an ABC nighttime kickoff, 6:30 Central Time. Listen, I tried. I like Dabo Swinney. I like Clemson. I have no ill will towards Clemson. I tried to talk myself into Clemson being better than 7-5 this year, and I just couldn't do it. There are too many question marks. They do have Miami this year. They have South Carolina at the end of the year like they have every year, and I don't know what to expect from South Carolina this year. They have to go to Cal, and I actually like Cal this year. I think Cal is the dark horse in the ACC, but they have to travel 3 time zones to play them. That's not an easy task. They play at Syracuse in early November, and Clemson has had a really tough time playing at Syracuse. So At best, I see Clemson going 7-5. At best, I have them going 6-6, which would be good enough for them to get to a bowl game. Some people, I won't name names, I won't name drop. Some people believe Dabo Swinney is going to get fired if Clemson goes 6-6. I am not in that group. I think Dabo Swinney, well, I don't think I know, he's the most successful coach in Clemson football history. He's the only guy that was able to go toe-to-toe with Nick Saban in his prime, beat him twice, win 2 national championships. You're not firing a guy like that, even if Clemson does go 6-6. I believe Dabo Swinney, he could go 0-12 at Clemson this year. He could go 0-12. Dabo Swinney's legacy has already been cemented. He's not getting fired if they go 6-6, which I actually have them going. Let's move on to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is a team that's going to get a lot of hype. Why? Because they hired James Franklin to be their next head coach, which I think was a great move by them, honestly. I went back earlier today, and I looked at James Franklin's previous stops as a head coach. He was at Penn State as early as last year. Before that, he was at Vanderbilt. And in his first season as Vanderbilt's head coach, they went 6-7. Went 6-6 in the regular season, lost the bowl game. In his first year at Penn State, they went 7-6. So I look at Virginia Tech's schedule. I haven't seen their quarterback, Ethan Grunkemeyer, playing enough games. I don't believe he has enough experience to know what he is at this point in time. If Virginia Tech was able to go 7-5 or 6-6 this year, compared to where they have been the last couple of years, I actually do have Virginia Tech going 6-6. I think that's a successful first year. Them getting back to a bowl game, them at least being in the national spotlight, they're being talked about. I think that's a successful year. Now, that's not going to fly, but I think there has to be a little bit of patience involved when it comes to Virginia Tech and James Franklin. Moving on with the ACC, we got 17 teams that we got to go through record predictions here, and I've already kind of spoiled what I think the conference championship matchup is going to be. What about Georgia Tech? Georgia Tech was a fun team last year. Went 8-4 in the regular season, actually ended up losing the bowl game, so they finished 8-5. No, I'm sorry. They went 9-3 in the regular season, lost the bowl game, finished 9-4. They lose Haynes King, who's been a foundational piece for them at quarterback. But the thing about Brent Key is there's never going to be any conversation about what Georgia Tech's identity is as long as he's there. They have a 1-2 punch at running back. They're going to play good defense. That is the secret sauce. Run the ball, play good defense. They bring in at quarterback Alberto Mendoza, who the younger brother of Fernando. And what I heard out of spring practice was it was very up and down, where he may have a play that has your jaw on the ground, and then he follows that up with 2 head scratchers. So I don't know I'm not judging Alberto Mendoza based off what he did in the spring, because he could be a completely different quarterback by the time he gets to the regular season. But for Georgia Tech, what they lost last year and how much they do not return from last year's team, I think 7-5 is fair. So I have Georgia Tech going 7-5. Pitt, there's a really good chance that Pitt could be 7-0 by the time they play Miami, at Miami, by the way, on October 24th. Now, I have them going 6-1 by the time they have to play Miami. Pitt got off to a really good start last year. Really good start. But the back half of the regular season was rough. They lost to Notre Dame. They lost to Miami. So they didn't finish their regular season on a good note. I talked about this when I was going through the underrated quarterbacks in college football. Pitt has a quarterback by the name of Mason Heinschel, who was a true freshman last year. He returns. Really high on Mason Heinschel, but I have Pitt going 7-5. We got to move quickly here because we got off to a little bit of a rocky start with the audio issues and making up for lost time here. With Cal, I love the hires that they made in the offseason with the coaching staff. Love their quarterback, JKS, as he's referred to on the show. If you want the long version, Jaron Kialwe Sagapogatele. I really pride myself on mastering that pronunciation. Really good quarterback. 5-star coming out of high school. Was at Oregon, now at Cal. He's a fun watch. So if you happen to be staying up late watching some Cal football, that's the name you're going to want to know. I have Cal going 8-4 this year. They do have a stretch, though, in their regular season where they're at SMU, they're at NC State, and they're at Virginia. There is a bye week sandwiched in between that NC State-Virginia game, but all three of those games are on the road, and you have to cross a couple of time zones coming from Cal. So that's going to be tough, but I have Cal going 8-4. Virginia, I just don't see it being a reasonable expectation that they're going to replicate the kind of success that they had last year. I have Virginia going 8-4. Bo Pribula is looking like he's going to be their starting quarterback, a transfer from Missouri. Before that was at Penn State. Solid quarterback, but I have Virginia going 8-4. NC State, a team that when they don't get buzz, when they don't get talked about, that's typically when they have their better seasons. I could talk myself into NC State going 9-3 this year. I have them going 8-4. I think CJ Bailey, also like Kevin Jennings, two guys that you probably don't hear talked about a lot on the big national shows, but they're two quarterbacks under the radar with NFL arm talent out the wazoo. So I highly recommend that you watch them. So I have NC State going 8-4. Florida State, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough for Florida State. It's going to be rough for old Mike Norvell. Not like we're rooting against him or anything. It's just crazy how far Florida State football has fallen since that year that they went undefeated in the regular season. It was unfortunate they lost Jordan Travis. It's just been really unlucky for Florida State football. It's a harder schedule in the ACC. I have Florida State going 4-8. If Florida State goes 4-8, Mike Norvell's gone. He is no longer on the hot seat because he does not have a job. So I think Mike Norvell, this is the year that he's fired. Florida State tried to hold on to him long enough. He does have a pretty big buyout, which is something that they have to factor into all this. Probably why they've held on to him for so long. But I have Florida State going 4-8 this year. Do not have a lot of hope for Florida State. And if they don't make a bowl, it's Mike Norvell is getting fired. So that's kind of plainly put. For Duke was a team that was just ravaged by the transfer portal. The good news is they have a really good returning running back by the name of Nate Shepard, who's going to carry that offense. They do have some returning production on the interior of that offensive line. It's still not going to be what it was last year, right, with Duke winning the ACC. I have them making a bowl. I have them going 6-6 this year. Let's move on to Wake Forest. Wake Forest, I don't see it 4-8. I have Wake Forest going 4-8. North Carolina, a team also, Wake Forest, North Carolina in the same state. Man, we have railed. I mean, we've not been kind to Bill Belichick on this show. We really haven't. But it's just kind of the nature of this business. And when you put a microphone in front of my face, I have to say my thoughts. It's not been good for North Carolina, and it's only gotten worse. The clown show's only gotten worse with the news of Michael Lombardi. And today, Steve Belichick, the son of Bill, was put on medical leave, and there was actually a written part in Bill Belichick's contract when he retired. Steve Belichick was next in line to be the head coach. He's on medical leave. I don't know the details of it, and I'm not going to speculate. It's just not a good-looking operation right now, plainly put. North Carolina's going 3-9 this year, which was actually one game worse than what they did last year. That was 4-8. If there was any year for North Carolina to be good, it would have been last year. The schedule was basically handpicked by the coaching staff. Very easy. I mean, you give an SEC team that schedule, and they might be in the playoff. But for North Carolina, I just don't see a lot of hope. I don't see this ending well whatsoever. And I think this is the final year for Bill Belichick in Chapel Hill. I have North Carolina going 3-9. Syracuse, much of the same. They were picked to finish second to last in the ACC. I have them going 4-8. Boston College, I have them going 3-9. Not a lot of good things to talk about with Boston College, and there might be less good things to talk about with the next team, the final team, Stanford. I have Stanford going 3-9. It's also a rough situation out there in California for Stanford. So those are my ACC record predictions. Now let's get to the conference championship prediction. So I already spoiled it. Miami's playing in the ACC. They're going to win the ACC, but the team they will be playing is the SMU Mustangs. Again, that if you're looking for underrated games to watch, that week 3 game when SMU is at Louisville, that game will determine who Miami is going to play in the ACC championship. I think SMU wins. I think SMU goes on to play Miami in the ACC championship, and Miami wins, and they get to the college football playoff. By the way, I can't wait to do – I'm going to do a little different than I did last year. I only did one college football playoff prediction last year. I'm going to do 2. I'm going to do a 1.0 version, which will be written in dark pencil, still pencil where I can erase it. But then that 2.0 version, that's written in pen, and that's final. That's when I have all my information that I need. We do our first predictions about midway through fall camp, and then we do one at the tail end of fall camp. I think that's only fair. I think that is only fair. And after all, it is my show. And fortunately, I'm able to do as many predictions as I want, but the consensus is we're going to do 2. We're going to do 2 predictions. So let's get into some of the beef that happened today. So Purdue has a new athletic director by the name of Tommy McClelland. He had his introductory press conference today. He came over from Rice. Before that, he was the deputy athletic director at Vanderbilt. And he had a statement, and I'm just going to read this for you, and you can do what you want with it. I'm going to share my thoughts after I'm done reading it. Quote, every recruit, every current student athlete will hear this message repeatedly. We are here to win championships. He finished it with this. If you don't want to win championships, go to Indiana. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. Was Indiana not the team that was holding up the championship trophy at the end of the year last year with the confetti raining down in Miami? Was that not Indiana? The team that went 16-0, had the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, and set every school record in the book, won the Big Ten, beat Ohio State, beat Oregon on the road in Eugene. Are we talking about the same Indiana? Because apparently that's what Tommy McClelland is talking about. He's directing his comments towards Curt Cignetti and Indiana. Really hot start for the guy, I gotta say. Here's the thing about Purdue, and this isn't me. Like, I'm not trying to. I mean, we have no reason to slight Purdue on the show, but they haven't won a championship of any kind in 16 years, and that's not football. That's not just focusing solely on basketball, which Purdue, as it stands right now, is a basketball school. That's talking about all their sports. So for you to just, come after the team that, by the way, Indiana beat you 66-0, the final game of the regular season, and then Indiana went on to do what they did. If I'm Purdue's athletic director, I'm keeping my mouth shut, because the last person I want to give fuel to is Curt Cignetti. Curt Cignetti proved all of us wrong. There is not a person in the United States of America that didn't doubt Indiana and Curt Cignetti at some point, and he went out, won the Big Ten, went undefeated, won the national championship, had the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, all that stuff. That is the last person I want to give any type of fuel towards. But it's okay. I'm not the one that has to play Indiana. In fact, you do. The person that made the comments, Purdue, you guys have to play Indiana at the end of the year. I get to sit back and I get to talk about it. Here's the big issue that I had with Tommy McClelland's comments. If you want to be confident, that's fine. I'm a confident person. I have no problem with confident people. But for you to come out and say that about a team that literally about 5 minutes ago won the national championship shows that you're a little out of touch. And I know Curt Cignetti, he made strong comments. Purdue's not exactly a football-rich institution, and neither is Indiana. Indiana, prior to last year, was the second all-time losingest program in college football, but that didn't matter when Curt Cignetti got their hands on him. Curt Cignetti made those comments about beating Michigan and beating Ohio State and beating up the Big Ten, but he backed it up. And the truth about Curt Cignetti is there's only one. There's only one Curt Cignetti, and that's okay. Curt Cignetti's a one-on-one guy. You don't have to be Curt Cignetti. You can be yourself. That's okay. You can be confident. You can run things your own way, but don't come out. Nobody forced you to say this at your introductory press conference. And guess what? If you go and you get beat by Curt Cignetti 66-0 again, these comments are going to get thrown back in your face. So it's one thing for Curt Cignetti to say something, but he backed it up. You are new. You are new, and you can't exactly be talking after Indiana just won the national championship and bludgeoned you. That game was in Purdue. That was at Purdue that they did that. If that wasn't a football game, if that was on the streets, Indiana would have been arrested by now and had several charges against them. But luckily, that wasn't a football game when they assaulted you. So I would have just kept my mouth shut. I applaud him having confidence, but have confidence behind closed doors. And then when you start winning, then you can start talking a little bit. But very out of touch comment from Tommy McCullough. Not a great start to being the athletic director at Purdue. And all of us were thinking the same thing when we saw those comments. It made a lot of noise today. So I know I wasn't the only one thinking that. But speaking of Indiana, boy, did they bolster that defensive line. So I am a college football sicko. I'm a college football nerd. I get all kinds of preview magazines. I read them. I consume a lot of college football content. It's my favorite sport for a reason. So one of the preview magazines that I have has Indiana just on the defense with the third-ranked linebacking core, with the seventh-ranked defensive line unit heading into the 2026 season. They also have the best offensive line. But the thing is, this team is built in the trenches, and they just got stronger because of this new rule that allows class of 2022 athletes to gain a fifth year of eligibility. They got Stephen Daly back, who, if you're not familiar with that name, that's okay. I'll remind you. Stephen Daly was one of this team's better defensive linemen last year. He spent his first 3 years at Kent State, transferred to Indiana, again, was a star on that defensive line for them. And he unfortunately got hurt in a very freak accident after winning the Big Ten championship. I think he went up to high-five a fan. He came down after jumping and just his knee was gone. So he's not at 100% in fall camp right now, but he is practicing. He is out there. Last year, Indiana, 5.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 35 total tackles. He led the Big Ten in tackles for loss with 19. So getting him back already to a top 10 unit, a really big deal. Really big deal. But it gets better. It gets better than that. They also got a guy by the name of Kellen Wyatt, who was on Indiana's team last year. His season was also cut short due to injury. He had a season-ending injury, only played in 7 games, transfer from Maryland in his career for Kellen Wyatt. 35 starts, 23 career tackles for loss, 11 sacks. And they just got those 2 players within the last 48 hours already to a top top 7 defensive line unit. But yet the Coaches Poll has them at number 6 because that makes all the sense in the world. All right. If you know me, you know that I'm a traditionalist when it comes to college football. And I'm a regular season guy. I think the fact that we get a playoff and we get to crown a national championship is the cherry on top. One of my favorite parts about college football, and I believe I addressed this on the last show when I ended with my favorite things about the sport, my favorite things about college football. But one of my favorite things about this God-given sport is rivalry games. And one of the best rivalries in college football, at least to me, is USC and Notre Dame. Now, for whatever reason, and to be frankly honest with you, I don't care what the reason is, they're not playing in 2026. And an interesting stat that you need to know about this rivalry is USC and Notre Dame has been one of the bedrock rivalries of college football. They first started playing in 1926, and they've played every year for a century outside of 2 years. Those 2 years were one of the games was canceled due to a world war going on. The second game was canceled due to COVID-19, a pandemic. So you're telling me a world war and a pandemic were the only things to stand in the way of this great rivalry that we know in college football. And why it's not being played this year is because you have two athletic directors who can't, for some odd reason, get their head out of their butts and schedule this game. I don't care whose fault it is. I've heard people trying to assign blame. I've heard people try to assign blame to USC. And honestly, if we are trying to assign blame, most of this probably does fall on USC because they're the team that decided to accept the invitation to the Big Ten, where they have to play conference games in Piscataway, New Jersey, and they have to play road conference games at Maryland, and they have to play games at Illinois. Listen, it was your decision to go to the Big Ten. Nobody forced you to go to the Big Ten. I romanticize about the Pac-12. I romanticize about what the Pac-12 was before the Pac-12 when they were the Pac-10. It wasn't your, it was your decision to go to the Big Ten. So if it was USC's fault, I don't know. I don't really care. It's not. Shame on you. Shame on you. When you are an athletic director, when you are a coach at either one of these institutions, USC or Notre Dame, you accept that job knowing that this is just part of the gig. You play each other every year in football. That's how this works. Because without rivalries, without hatred, and these two teams hate each other, without that, you sanitize college football. You remove a layer of what makes this sport so great. That's why people love the regular season so much, is because you get annual rivalries like this. But when you take them away, you don't remove fan interest entirely, because diehards are still going to watch, and casual fans might even watch too. But if you remove rivalries, you're just removing a layer of what makes the sport so great. Now, Notre Dame did replace USC on their schedule with BYU, and that's certainly going to be a marquee matchup this year in college football. And honestly, I hope Notre Dame plays BYU every year, but I also hope that they play USC every year too. So, again, I'm happy. I think college football fans should rejoice because this rivalry is coming back. I'm happy about it. It's scheduled to come back in 2030, which I'm happy about it. But at the same time, it's 4 years too late. This game never should have been postponed, or they never should have stopped playing. Part of what factors into this discussion is for USC, they looked at it as, well, we already have a tough Big Ten schedule, and you add Notre Dame in there, and that makes things a lot more difficult. So this leads to a bigger conversation. When it comes down to the end of the year and the college football playoff committee is deciding who gets in the playoff, what are you factoring in more? Strength of schedule or how many wins you have and what your record is? Because let me put it this way. We have teams in the SEC. We have teams in the Big Ten that have gauntlets of a schedule this year. I mean, you go throughout the SEC and you go through, they just added a 9th conference game, and they also added a game in there, a 10th game that is mandated that you play an out-of-conference Power 4 opponent. So that's 10 games against a power opponent. And they got rid of that cupcake week schedule they had in November. They got rid of that, and they replaced it with a Power 4 team. You're looking at that schedule, and there are teams that could go 9-3 in the SEC, but yet be some of the best teams in college football. So let's take an Indiana, for example. Indiana is known to have one of the weakest non-conference games. I mean, it's just a bunch of group of fives in there. And then they get to their Big Ten schedule, and it's not exactly the hardest. There's some hard games in there, but Ohio State certainly has a really rough schedule. USC has a really rough schedule in the Big Ten. Michigan has a really rough schedule. Oregon has a rough schedule. But for Indiana, it's true they could be the best team in college football but still have a weak non-conference schedule. So what happens if Indiana goes 10-2? You look at their schedule and they have a bunch of cupcakes in the non-con versus, let's say, a 9-3 team from the SEC. Well, the playoff committee looks at that and they see a 10-2 Indiana and they see double-digit wins. Well, that team's getting in the college football playoff. The committee doesn't have the stones to say, well, this 9-3 team that we're looking at, yeah, they went 9-3. They had one less win than that Indiana team, but their strength of schedule is a lot harder. That's not factored into the discussion at all, and that's why the SEC went to 9 conference games and throw a 10th one in there against a non-con Power 4 with the understanding that the playoff committee was going to adjust their metrics used, that they were going to heavily bake in the strength of schedule aspect into all this. The playoff committee is not going to do that. They still factor in how many wins you have, and I'm here to break the news that teams in college football may not always be what their record says they are. You could take a 12-0 James Madison. Yeah, James Madison, they went undefeated, but what happened when they got to the college football playoff and they had to play Oregon? Just because you went 12-0, that doesn't mean you're one of the best teams in college football. So I think that there needs to be more of a nuanced discussion when it comes to the playoff committee. I think strength of schedule needs to be one of the major metrics that's factored into all this so that we don't have teams like USC and Notre Dame canceling their rivalry. Thank goodness they're bringing it back. And honestly, it should have never been canceled in the first place because it's college football. And rivalries are one of the things that makes college football great. So that is my rant. Lots of tangents on the show tonight. I'm going to end. I have a couple more things to get to, and I'll make these brief. Let's get to Vanderbilt football fall camp intel. So earlier today, I was on Next Man Up with Jake Lyman on 102.5, the ESPN affiliate here in Nashville, which our show is partnered with. We interviewed Joey Dwyer of Vanderbilt on SI to get an update on how Vanderbilt fall camp was going. It just started yesterday, but they had a couple of practices. There was an introductory press conference with Clark Lee. So here are the things that I gathered from where Vanderbilt stands as of right now. Clark Lee feels really good about the depth compared to what they had last year. I tend to agree. I've been reading about Vanderbilt. I've been looking at their roster. I've been looking at their depth charts. I feel good about Vanderbilt's depth too. I feel good about their offensive line. Even though they're having to replace 4 starters, I believe they acquired the right pieces in the transfer portal. I feel great about their run game. Cedric Alexander and MK Young are 2 of the most underrated backs, not just in the SEC, but in the country. That 1-2 punch is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Feel great about their wide receiver core. The defense, I do have some questions about the front 7. Feel great about the secondary. They got a transfer from Clemson at safety by the name of Ricardo Jones. He had 6 interceptions last year, which was tied for second in the country. So I feel good about the depth that Vanderbilt has. So I'm in agreement with Clark Lee there. Where the conversation pivoted to, and you might imagine where this is going to go, Jared Curtis. Jared Curtis is going to be talked about a lot because he is the number 1 overall quarterback in the 2026 high school recruiting class. He was a 5-star. Georgia was in the mix for him. Oregon was in the mix for him. He was committed to Georgia until the 11th hour, flipped to Vanderbilt on National Signing Day. For Jared Curtis, it's never been about, the physical learning curve. For him, Jared Curtis is very well off physically. He was built in a lab, has elite arm talent, can run, big kid, strong. I don't question Jared Curtis's physical tools whatsoever. Where I think the curve is going to be for Jared Curtis is mentally. How quickly are you able to adjust to learning a new offense? Because what Tim Beck, their offensive coordinator, runs, it is complicated. It does take some time to learn. How quickly are you able to learn it? How quickly are you able to incorporate what you learned onto the game field, onto the practice field, that sort of thing? Joey was telling us that Jared Curtis did look better than Blaise Berlowitz, who supposedly he's in a quarterback competition with. But we all know that Jared Curtis is not being paid all that money just to be the backup. Jared Curtis is going to start this year. That's not me breaking any sort of news. I'm just telling you what's going to happen. So I'm just curious to see what the learning curve is for Jared Curtis. Doesn't matter what level of high school football he played at. I played at the same level that Jared Curtis played at, the same classification that Jared Curtis played at in high school. There is going to be a learning curve, regardless of what level of high school football he's coming to, because he's going to the SEC. So depending on how quickly he is able to get over that curve determines how successful Jared Curtis can be right away. So those were kind of my takeaways from Vanderbilt football, where they stand in fall camp right now. Here's how I'm going to end the show. Yes. Oh, man. This has made its rounds on Twitter, on Instagram. ESPN's been talking about it nonstop. Yes, I did see that Akron football has posted that they are doing this fan giveaway opportunity where they will draw from a pool of their season ticket holders, and they will allow the winner of that pool to script their opening drive during their home opener against Robert Morris in week 2. I have seen that. First of all, I think it's a brilliant marketing strategy from Akron in a day and age where teams are scratching and clawing for every last penny that they can get to be able to compete in this new landscape of college football with NIL and transfer portal. I think it's a brilliant move because now you have a lot of people applying for season tickets for Akron, but you also have celebrities getting in on this. And they just put out the other day that their season tickets are sold out for this year. So that's more money infused in the Akron football program, which good for them. Brilliant marketing strategy. Second of all, this is hilarious. A fan gets to script the opening drive on offense for Akron in their home opener against Robert Morris. That is hilarious. That is absolutely hilarious. So I joked about, I posted on Twitter, I posted on Instagram. I'm not a season ticket holder for Akron, but I'd like to throw my hat in the ring. I'd like to throw my name in the hat. We talked about it yesterday on Next Man Up with Jake Lyman, Corey Curtis, and I. We all talked about it. We all joked that, about my name being in the mix. The plays that I would run if I were to script the opening drive. Now, this is going to be a thing where the coach probably gives whatever fan wins this a select number of plays that he gets to choose from. That's probably how this is going to work. But we joked about it yesterday on the show on Next Man Up. But then, because this has been a running joke, not just on that show, but really at the station at 102.5, it's been a running joke along all of the, some of my co-employees and things like that. Some of my friends at the station. This has just been a running joke. So I decided to fan the flames a little bit today. And I posted on Instagram a graphic of me being announced as the offensive coordinator of Akron. Now, did I necessarily know the reaction that I would get? Not really. I thought most people would get the gist of it. I thought most people would understand that it was a joke. I was wrong. My phone was lighting up like a Christmas tree all day. From former teammates that I played with in college, our team chaplain even texted me, "Congratulations about the gig. Wasn't sure, didn't know you had any interest in coaching. Excited about your move to Ohio." And I kept getting those texts, and if I just read to you all of the DMs that I received today, I honestly feel I honestly feel like a jerk about it. But at the same time, I filled everybody in. I'm like, guys, it is just a joke. It's not real. I wanted to fan the flames a little bit. And I had to show them the original post of Akron football and how they're doing this promotional fan giveaway. So, long story short, I really overestimated the amount of people that did not see this post. And in a slightly sadistic way, in a kind of a sick, twisted way, I almost take it as a compliment because a lot of people believed that I had actually accepted this offensive coordinator job at a Division I football program after not having coached. I've never coached in college before. I've never coached in high school. I do coach quarterbacks on the side as a little bit of a side hustle, but I've never coached in college before. And there were a lot of people that believed that I had actually gotten a Division I coordinator opportunity at 24 years old. So part of me kind of takes that as a compliment because they believe that my first job as a coach, Division I coordinator role. Now, that's just not the case because it's not real. But I really did not expect the amount of responses that I received today of people actually believing it. I actually thought people would think it was a joke. So I'm sorry, first of all, but also I think it's kind of hilarious. And I know a lot of you have expressed that you think it's funny too, but no, I am not the offensive coordinator of Akron. But if they do come calling and they end up wanting me to call plays for them on their opening drive on offense versus Robert Morris, I would happily accept. In fact, I already know what my first play would be. And if I do get the opportunity, my plan is to not give the headset back. So that is, I just wanted to not get out ahead of that because it's already out there, but I wanted to address that on tonight's show. Really appreciate everybody that has stopped in and listened live. Really appreciate it. And I apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning, but I appreciate those of you that stuck around and waited for those to get figured out. In fact, I was unaware until some of you let me know. So I appreciate that. Thank you for letting me know. We will be back next Tuesday. Will be our next show. And after that, we're going to move to 3 shows a week. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern time. College football year-round. Season is right around the corner. We are so close. Lots of jam-packed shows to come your way. Believe that. And you will not be alerted about those shows unless that you subscribe to the channel. So make sure that you're subscribed to Air Raid with Parker Kelley. Also subscribe to the 102.5 The Game YouTube channel. You can watch the show on either platform. I prefer you to subscribe to both if you're able. And we will be back on Tuesday night. Again, really appreciate everybody that's watched live, everybody that's subscribed. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you next week. God bless.